I like to think of creativity like a campfire. While it may get really hot from time to time, and sometimes it goes out altogether, if you want to keep it rolling, you have to feed it fuel. And while there are times where I feel extremely creative, there are times where I'm pretty drained of fuel, or in this case, inspiration. Now, my job is making music, so I have to find ways to keep that inspiration going. And while finding amazing art that I like, gaining life experiences, and taking some rest days, well, those are ways to add logs to that fire. It helps to find a blowtorch, a flamethrower, something that takes those embers and turns them up to 11. And for me, that's always been new instruments. Picking up a banjo, a mandolin, a Merlin dulcimer. These were big moments for me when it comes to creative inspiration. But this instrument right here, well, it sparked a whole new fire for me, and I am so excited to tell you guys about it. And it's a fun story that takes us from MTV to Goodwill with a few detours in between. So by the way, if you're new here, my name is Adam, and every week I drop a new video about music production. So if that's something you're into, go ahead and subscribe, and let's get into it. Now, if you don't know, this instrument is called a charango, and it's something I didn't even know about until last year, but unbeknownst to me, I've been listening to the charango for a while now. You see, back in 2011, young Adam was a senior in high school, and while 80s and early 90s babies will tell you that MTV was already done and dusted by that point, to me, it was still worth watching. And the VMAs were the main event every year. So Baby Sligs popped some popcorn and tuned in for the Video Music Awards. And I want to say Adele was the main event that night, but a mid-show performance by an up-and-coming band totally blew my mind. And they were called Young the Giant. They played their song, My Body, and high school me was floored. I immediately went to Best Buy, I think, and grabbed their album on CD, and it lived in my CD player for the rest of that year. And since then, I've followed their releases, I've enjoyed their records a lot, but somehow I never got the chance to see them live, which that matters later. Their schedule just never matched mine. If they were in Florida, I was gone. So one of my favorite bands just happened to elude me for years. Now, on one of their newer records, Mirror Master, there's a song called Superposition that I totally love. And it kicks off with this really unique sounding riff. And I just assumed it was a mandolin. And I play mandolin, so I learned how to play it. And it just didn't sound right. But later on in the song, there are more layers, like a sitar, keyboards, all kinds of stuff. So I just figured that they were pulling some studio magic to get the mandolin to sound that cool. Now, fast forward again to 2023. And one of my best friends, David, lands a gig as Young the Giant's guitar tech, which is awesome. So he packs up his tools and they hit the road. And after his first run with them, we're talking gear, as people do, and he says something about Eric's charango. And I've never heard that word, so I immediately stop him and ask what he's talking about. And he says, oh, it's the little 10-string instrument he plays on Superposition. You know, this one of these. Now, don't ask me how I made it this far without just looking up a video of them playing the song live, because honestly, that would have been a great place to start. But once I just assumed it was a mandolin, I dove in and started tinkering. So that was it. I knew what I was after. But it turns out Guitar Center and Sam Ash don't just have charangos lying around. And information on where to get one is pretty slim, besides a few websites where you can get them imported from South America. Now, what I didn't know is that the charango is popular in the Andean regions, and they're actually traditionally made from the shell of an armadillo. And while they have matching sets of strings like a mandolin, they're not metal strings. They're actually nylon, like a classical guitar or a ukulele. So you get the chorusy two-tone effect of a mando, but with a less metallic and more chill sound, like nylon stringed instruments typically have. The exact origin of the charango is not exactly agreed upon. If you want to read the Wikipedia page about them, you'll see what I mean. There are many theories. But my favorite theory about the charango is that the instrument is named after the word charangueros, meaning someone of questionable character and low morals, which makes sense because a lot of musicians are indeed charangueros. But anyway, my quest to find my own charango for a reasonable price was underway. And when Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist didn't turn up any solid leads, I went to my secret weapon. Now, if you don't know, Goodwill, the thrift store, has an eBay-style auction site called Shop Goodwill, where some of their stores will list items that are a little more unique or expensive. And I've managed to find some super interesting stuff on there for cheap. For example, I bought a Questlove Ludwig drum set for $35 on there. It was a 4-hour drive to pick it up, but it was totally worth it. And so when I looked on Shop Goodwill, they had 2 charangos up for auction. One was in great condition, and the current bid was only $50. And the other was a little rough around the edges, but it was going for much less. Well, I decided I didn't need a project, so I was in for the nicer one. And this is where a new character enters the story, Johnny Morgan. Johnny's an awesome musician and singer-songwriter from Orlando. And while we'd run in the same circles for years, we never actually worked together on any music. That is until recently, when he called me up to see if I'd produce a record for him. And as someone who's admired his work from a distance, it was an obvious yes. And while he usually has a full band that hashes out his songs with him, for this record, he wanted to do it a little differently. He had some voice memos, some basic demos he had put together, and we started working through the arrangements together. And everything was going pretty smoothly, except for one song, Live Before I Die. It's about, believe it or not, leaving nothing on the table, not passing on your dreams for another day, and just living a full life to the best of your abilities now. And for some reason, we just couldn't get that song to click. And you might see where I'm going with this. But while we were working on the song, the charango auction was coming to a close. So we took a little break to see where we were at, and someone had outbid me with like 2 minutes left in the auction. So I turned to Johnny and I asked, should I place a higher bid? And would you believe it? Mr. Live Before I Die himself said, nah, do you really need it? Now, he didn't have the whole backstory that you do, so we'll give him a pass. But I decided to move on. We worked on the session and we kept moving. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was supposed to have bid. So I started checking Shop Goodwill religiously for another try. And after weeks of checking, another charango hit their site. So of course, I put in a bid that was way too high on day one, and somehow no one else made a real move for it. So I ended up winning the auction at $52. And when it came in, I immediately tuned it up and it sounded great right out of the box. However, there were some problems. So the tuning real charango players use, it's really concentrated on the first 2 or 3 frets, and my fingers just didn't want to cooperate in a space that small. And second, I couldn't figure out how to play the superposition riff from Young the Giant at all. So I shot David a text to ask what I was doing wrong and if it needed a special tuning. And it turns out, yes and no. So the tuning is E, A, D, G, B. So while I was doing it wrong, the tuning isn't exactly special. It's basically just guitar, but without the high E string. So fast forward a few weeks, and I've been fiddling around with the charango, and Johnny and I have a session booked to try and figure out the missing piece for his track. And after hours of trying different guitar ideas, I decided to grab my mandolin because, of course, it's what I do. But it is just way too metallic and bright for this track. So I dig one layer deeper into my bag of tricks, and we give the charango a try. And wouldn't you know it, it clicked instantly. And it really became the lead driver of this whole entire song. This instrument that we didn't even put in the song originally became the body of the song. The bulk of the chords and the bulk of the rhythm of this song is really driven by this little instrument right here. And since then, you better believe that I've been playing the charango all the time, using it to come up with better ideas and more interesting ways to play parts. And at least for the time being, it's been the flamethrower that I needed to get my campfire burning nice and hot. Now, eventually this won't be as novel, and I'll probably need some new thingy to help get out of first gear. So stay tuned for when I eventually end up with a sitar or a pedal steel or something. You never know. Oh, and by the way, the producer planner drops August 31st, the real physical version, which I'm so excited about. But right now, you can get the PDFs of the planner for free. Just click the link in the description and I'll email them to you, and I'll send you another email when the real book is out. Now, one weird instrument that did not inspire much for me is the electric kazoo. So if you want to learn a little about that, watch this video next. Or if you want to learn about the Merlin dulcimer, which I do love, watch this one.